It has just gone the home stretch of the hour, this 1400 hours today. It is the 20th of May on a Tuesday afternoon, and this is Market View, where business is never boring and the numbers aren't just digits, but they are destiny. I am Sifiso Mumalo, and on this Tuesday afternoon, we are not just following the money, we are following the momentum. Coming up on the show today, 37 billion emalangeni pledged in investment. And the question on every entrepreneur's mind, how do I get a slice of that pie? Well, the Ministry of Commerce is rolling out the red carpet for SMEs, and the Director of MSMEs tells us why the time to act is now. Also, it's the gender gap that just won't go away. Only 48% of women in Eswatini are banked, compared to 62% of men. Very, very concerning. The Deputy Governor of the Central Bank isn't mincing her words, and neither are we. We break down the numbers and the need for action. And on Enterprise Watch, the final mile of financial inclusion, 87% is good, but 100% is transformative. We can both agree. Our economist, Sanele Sibiya, joins us in studio with one message. This is not charity. It's smarter economics, and it's a national imperative. Plus your daily pulse on the markets, from Wall Street cautious rally to the Asian turbulence, as well as how gold and Brent crude are faring. Market View Agenda brings it all to the table. So fasten your seatbelts. Thank you for staying with us. This is Business on Business, and it starts now. Kicking off our business news segment, the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade has announced plans to support small and medium enterprises in maximizing benefits from the 37 billion emalangeni investments that were unveiled during the Eswatini Investment Forum last week. Now, the Director of SMEs, Mluleki Dlamini, says the ministry will be working closely with business organizations to equip entrepreneurs with the skills as well as the strategies that are needed to position themselves for growth and opportunity.
We do appreciate the initiative on investment that came through from the investment.
We are pleased to inform stakeholders.
We do appreciate the initiative on investment that came through from the investment forum that we held as a country through the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority. One would want to appeal to our micro, small and medium enterprises to position themselves for these opportunities, so that when the time comes, they are able to take advantage of this opportunity. One would appeal that because we understand that they are in various sectors, so we implore them that they have all of their necessary documentation ready. Like when we are in construction, you should have registered with the Construction Industry Council, and so that when the opportunities are there, you are able to then tender. What we are looking at is that we're looking at the finalization of the regulations of the Citizen Economic Empowerment Council, which it's through the Act. So in that way, we are saying that there should be a local reservation for businesses in terms of percentages and also sectors. So in that way, we are saying that if it is an agriculture project, we want to see a reservation or certain percentage reserved for the local businesses, so that our micro, small and medium enterprises benefit. Not to say that when they are now awarded, they are not obliged to provide satisfactory services, but we are saying that they should also provide quality services rather than providing substandard. So in this way, we are saying that let us prepare for ourselves for this opportunity that comes with this investment forum. Definitely, we will be assisting and facilitating in terms of engaging the business associations to make sure that they are aware of the opportunities and how to tap in these opportunities. And furthermore, we do have trainings that we'll be doing to assist them in terms of capacity building, and also ensuring that they are aware of what are the procurement requirements for such projects. And I believe that we'll work together with the business associations to ensure that they benefit. Some of the sectors that came out of the investment conference were basically the mining, manufacturing, retail, and also agriculture, agro-processing, solar generation power, and also clean energy.
Despite ongoing efforts to advance financial inclusion, significant challenges continue to persist. According to Deputy Governor Felicia Gunene, there remains a staggering 14% gender gap in bank account ownership. Speaking at the Financial Inclusion Symposium on Monday, Gunene revealed that only 48% of women are banked, compared to 62% of males, and a disparity that continues to hold women back from full economic participation. She stressed that addressing this gap requires decisive action, calling on stakeholders to step up efforts to empower women through accessible financial services.
We are pleased to inform stakeholders that, in collaboration with the World Bank, we have launched a technical assistance project focused on gender financial inclusion. One key output will be a supply-side gender disaggregated data diagnostics, which will inform the national roadmap. Despite these efforts, significant challenges still remain. Today, there is still a 14% gender gap in bank account ownership, with 48% of women banked compared to 62% of men. Yet, data shows us that women better performed in servicing their debt obligations. Addressing this gap requires decisive action. Eswatini can develop a clearer picture of financial inclusion through a gender lens, leading to more effective policies and programs that empower women economically. Eswatini's financial inclusion journey continues to be shaped by a spirit of collaboration, innovation, and commitment to ensuring that no one is left behind. The tangible progress made thus far, from strategy development and regulatory reform to digital innovation, financial literacy, and data-driven inclusion, reflects the collective effort of government, regulators, financial institutions, and our development partners. As we look ahead, we remain steadfast in our resolve to build a more inclusive, equitable, and resilient financial system, one that truly empowers Eswatini.
All right, let's go for a net break. We have Sandy Lesbia ready to help us understand the 37 billion Malangeni investment and its implications on our economy after the break.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is our Enterprise Watch segment. The Alliance for Financial Inclusion and the Central Bank of Eswatini hosted the Financial Inclusion Symposium on Monday. Now, they brought together key industry leaders to tackle a crucial question: why is financial inclusion so vital to our economy? With the country currently at 87% in terms of financial inclusion, the focus now shifts to the final mile. What more must be done to ensure that every Eswatini Swati or every Swati is fully included in the financial system. Joining us in studio, Sanelus B, our economist, is going to explain to us why achieving 100% financial inclusion is not just a goal, but a necessity for economic growth, empowerment, and national development. Sanele, let's cut through the noise. My first question is 100% even possible?
Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. I would say this day and age, getting closer to 100% is quite plausible. If you look at the way fintech has come into the space of access to finance, how people are now handling their monies. So now when we talk financial inclusion, we don't only just mean you probably just having a bank account, right? But we also mean having access to those fintech platforms where you can actually transact and do all of those, all of these other services that you would ideally get in a bank. So yes, as we move on towards adoption of fintech and actually integrating fintech into the banking system, we should get pretty close to 100%.
It's interesting because, we speak about 100% being something that is somewhat relatively plausible. I look at the 87% that we are currently on, and I say, that is impressive. I mean, 87%, when you look at a general population, is a really good number. I wish I did the math so I can give out the real numbers there, but it's 87% of our population. And to my mind, the 13% that then remains also says to me, maybe you have people who are really left behind here. So my question then becomes, why is attaining this 13% so extraordinarily difficult?
It becomes extraordinarily difficult because you have to deal with, basically the culture. They're bringing quite a number of other factors that come into play, issues of access and control to resources, issues of mobility, whether people are actually mobile or not. And then there's also issues of poverty that you have to consider that, probably some other people, we are now talking of the poorest of the poor in society who don't even have access to a cell phone, who don't even have access to quite a number of these fintech initiatives. So all of those factors come into play when you look into that 100% type of spectrum. And also it does speak to the issue, Mr. Ngumalo, that we need to open up our fintech space so that you allow people to be banked in the way they want to be banked, not in the way that the banking system wants them to be banked.
I just did the numbers. I was doing the math and I was calculating what 87% means to our economy, and it speaks to about 1,044,000 people. And that's a good number, considering that our population is 1.2 million. But again, that deficit, that negative number there is still quite huge. And I do want to understand, because we're hearing the big numbers. I see here they're saying 300,000 to be trained, fintech investments. We are also talking, mobile money gains. But are we actually reaching out the unbanked? The unbanked population, are we just reserving the already connected?
I think when it comes to that, my assertion has always been, Mr. Ngumalo, yes, we have reached them. We are reaching the unbanked, right?
Okay.
Purely because we've seen what has happened. You look at how elderly grants are being distributed across the country now. Yeah. It's either through a bank account or through mobile money. So literally and virtually everyone has access to that type of platform. Right. So that one then becomes a problem for me in the sense that we are pushing towards fintech as an enabler to financial inclusion. But are we getting fintech to a place where we can truly say we have banked you?
Yes.
Rather than you transacting money. Does it then mean we are going to get the financial sector to actually probably say, if I want a loan, have them consider my mobile money statement, that type of thing? Because financial inclusion is not just about the use, Mr. Ngumalo. It also speaks to the fact of how then my access to these financial services assists me in breaking the poverty trap, in being able to get this line of credit, in being able to move up in the world. If I want to buy if I want to buy goods on credit, I should be able to use that as proof of concept of banking, right? If I want to start a business and I need a loan, I need to go to a bank and say, this is how my business has been operating. This is my mobile money statement. Can you take this? This is my this and fintech statement. Is that one acceptable or not? Yeah.
I want us to get into now the gender dynamics of it all, and rightfully so, because gender dynamics and gender inclusion is a big conversation in the globe right now. Rightfully so. The deputy governor dropped a truth bomb yesterday, and she said, what, 48% of women are banked, which makes 62% of men who are banked. To me, that's not just a gap, it's a gulf, and I do want to understand, why has financial inclusion for women stalled? Who is responsible for threading that needle? And I really want to understand that part.
So it's not necessarily stalled. It's an issue where in economics, when we move into the heterodox of economics, we go beyond just looking at people as consumers and people as producers.
Yeah.
And we do understand that people have an identity, and on that identity, there is quite a lot of issues to speak with what you can have and what you cannot have. So I think what the problem has become in economics basically is we tend to assume and we tend to think that people will get impacted by policy the same way, regardless of their age, sex, or gender. But we do know that in Eswatini, for example, there are those gender dynamics to our access to quite a number of initiatives, including inheritance, including your mobility as a woman, and quite a number of things. So those cultural and those patriarchal type of dynamics of, or in the configuration of our society tend to find their way into that gender statistic. And also, if you look at poverty, we've often said poverty was the face of a woman, right? Not necessarily because poverty is feminine, but because of the way resources are arranged in society and who gets to have access and control over those resources.
Yes.
So you eventually, when people who don't have access and control are compared to people with access and control, you'll see that the ones that lack that access and that control tend to fare a bit unfavorably compared to the ones that have that access and that control.
Appreciate your assertion of cutting through the noise and pointing out the real issues without necessarily sounding abrasive, because some of these issues have been ongoing for a very long time, and we ought to really address this elephant that is in the room. And I was looking at the cutaways that were playing on screen while you were making your assertion, and I saw there's a fair number of women and men in that room, and to me that speaks development, and hopefully that is reflected on the numbers as time goes by. But I want to understand the real cost now of not achieving this 100% in terms of our of our 100% inclusion, so to speak. I want to understand, paint the picture for us. How does that 13% left out of the how does it drag down productivity?
Access to credit and, access to finance is one of the critical enablers to every country's growth and development. And the way our financial systems are so structured is such that even if I'm giving you money from my own pocket, I will need to somehow see some proof that, this cash flow that you are selling to me is there. You are not just making numbers and thumb-sucking them and saying, I make so much a month, right? So without financial inclusion and without that track record of transactions that each and every individual in society can go out there and say, these are my monthly transactions, this is my income, then that means we are not going to be able to bridge the gap in terms of access to credit and in access to finance, basically. Whether you're talking of credit for consumption purposes or credit for investment purposes, we are going to always have that gap, and that is quite critical in ensuring that our people are able to move ahead and they're able to get into the next phase of, the development that we need in this country.
You speak about a track record of actually people transacting and actually having that data.
Yeah.
And to me, that speaks to my heart, because it's so powerful. We often see this inclusion as ticking boxes of inclusion, not necessarily empowerment, where we see people actually using the accounts that are created. We come back and we say we have a report, we registered so many people opened accounts, but are they using the accounts? And I think that is a very, very dangerous. But I want us to be bold. Should Eswatini be legislating access to financial services the way that we legislate, important sectors like education as well as health? Is that where we need to go now?
I think for me, what the central bank has done in terms of that sandbox, platform that they've presented, I think that's quite the way to go, because what you want to do is you want to open up the space to fintech, and you want fintech to be developed within a space where it's relatively safe and won't cause much trouble for both your consumer and the producer and the developer. And by the time you take it out to market, you want to have tested it within a controlled environment. So I've often said, in economics, there's something we call the economics of overregulation. Regulation is okay, but overregulation is not good. And as it were, our sector still needs to loosen up a bit in terms of our financial sector. We still need to deregulate a bit, loosen up a bit, so that we are able to allow for, say, investment bankers to come into the play, Islamic bankers to come into the play. Right now, they are not there because probably there's no legislation, and it seems we are over-regulated because we've defined what a bank is. We've defined what a financial services provider is, right? And we've put so many, these very strict parametric to that, right? And if we tend to overregulate, then you tend to stifle out some innovation. So I think that sandbox concept is a very good concept for me. It allows for the development and adoption of fintech within a regulated space, while the bank in itself and other regulatory authorities also learn what needs to be infused into the regulation of that technology.
We are in front of the entire nation, the private sector. We are in front of our citizens. We're in front of government as we are seated here, and I want to make a bold recommendation right now. Fresh off the Eswatini Investment Conference, I suggest that next year we have amongst our list of speakers an economist who is going to just go up there and speak on recommendations. I mean, we do not want to overregulate if we are speaking investment in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Let's go for a break. We have Sunny Lesbia still in studio to chime into the markets of the day.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
This is our market analysis, 23 minutes into the program. We have exactly 7 minutes, Sanele, to really cut through all these numbers. Perhaps let me preface with the U.S. market, seeing here that, there's a relatively flat movement in the Nasdaq and the S&P 500, but the Dow Jones is showing a modest uptick, and I want to understand the underlying factors that are driving this divergence within the U.S. indices right now.
Thank you, Nxumalo. So when we're looking into what's happening in the U.S. right now, it's a couple of issues. There is the White House issue, the administration issue, and the uncertainty it brings into the markets, right? And just the previous day, we've seen some threats around, bringing back tariffs. And then also we've seen the administration doing something very much unprecedented, coming at the Federal Reserve Bank, forcing and telling the Federal Reserve Bank to cut those interest rates. So now what that creates, Mr. Nxumalo, is a situation of a business sector that is going to be sitting there and waiting and looking at what is going to come out of the Federal Reserve Bank. And there's quite a number of speakers who are going to speak today coming out of the Feds. So that's what the markets are going to look forward to. So that's why the numbers are relatively flat. Nothing much has moved. Just looking at those figures and seeing what's going to happen in terms of the Reserve Bank, in terms of the interest rate story. And also we are waiting to see, we're waiting to see the manufacturing purchasing index data, just to tell us if businesses really are growing, if businesses are purchasing inputs to put into their business processes. So the markets are waiting to see what the data is going to be, while at the same time they are taking advantage of the positives in terms of the earnings that we are seeing, and we are waiting to see what NVIDIA will be putting out in terms of that earnings report coming out next week.
Looking across the board, we have exactly 5 minutes. I want you to give us, for lack of a better term, a rapid assessment of everything else. Across the board, consistent positive movements. Europe, Asia, South Africa, literally everywhere, but there is some red down there. But just give us that rapid assessment.
So what we're seeing there in the markets overall is, number one, we saw Europe yesterday and the EU and the UK making those trade deals, right? They did come up with quite a number of trade deals. That's what Europe is responding to. We're seeing even France coming closer to that 8,000 mark. The UK staying at that 8,700. Germany topping that 24,000 because of that EU-UK trade deal that was arrived at yesterday. And also, the news we woke up to where China actually cut down their interest rates, right? So that means demand coming out of China is not expected to slow down in the short to medium term. So that's why when you cross into
the Asian markets, can we have the Asian markets on screen? Yes.
Yeah, you will see again that the Asian markets are doing very well again, based on the fact that China seems to be doing, being proactive and showing that it shows up the markets, and we're not going to see that submerger activity coming through from the Asian markets. And then if you move to South Africa again, it's a positive move being lifted by those movements within Asia, and the relative cooling down in those tensions, and the fact that there are deals that are being made in the global markets that we are seeing, even though we are showing those slight losses in the South African market, but it's still on average that 92,000 that we've been seeing over the past few days, purely because we're seeing that. But also when you look into the metals, in terms of your commodities, you see that, gold has actually lost from where it was.
Slightly up though.
Yeah, slightly up though, but we're down from that 3,500 mark that we were at 3,500. Now we're back in that 3,200 type of equilibrium. So signaling that there is a bit of calm coming back into the markets. And Brent crude, again, when you look at it, it's somehow a bit worrisome of the fact that there are those demand issues coming into play when you're looking at what China's trying to do, and we're still looking forward at what the US is going to come up with in terms of those stimulus and in terms of those purchasing index data, what it's going to tell us, right? And then when you come into the currencies, normally you'll see that we are on a very strong footing today in terms of the currencies. We're back on that 17.98 per dollar type of region, and that 20.22 per euro, purely because against the dollar, remember that sovereign debt rating that came out of the US yesterday, that downgrade on US bonds and US debt. So now that is somehow weakened the dollar, and those movements within the EU, and we've also seen President Ramaphosa jetting off into the US to have those talks with President Trump. So we're seeing that acting to stabilize the Lilangeni a bit.
Thank you, Sanele. We are certainly looking forward to that conversation between President Cyril Ramaphosa, and President Trump, and how it's going to affect the numbers therein. This has been our Market View episode this Tuesday, the 20th of May. Thank you for staying with us on the program, and thank you to Sanele for his insights on the last two segments of our show today. Have yourselves a good afternoon. Bye-bye.